When my middle girl was a teenager, about 20 years ago, her best friend had moved to a little town about an hour away from us outside of Huntington, Arkansas. The girls begged me to bring my daughter to spend the weekend with her. So I called the girl's mom and made sure that she would be at home and that it was okay to spend the weekend. The arrangements were made. I dropped my daughter off after school that Friday. The mom would bring her home that Sunday after church. We started as soon as she got off the bus, and it got dark before we could get there. I don't remember much about the town except it had an old country store. There was a sign that said, "Established in 1880. The way the place looked was like we had stepped back in time about 100 years. I told my daughter, "This place really creeps me out. Something's wrong here," but she begged me to let her stay. We got to her friend's house, and I really didn't doubt that her mom would protect my daughter, so I let her stay. As I headed for the hour drive home, I still couldn't shake that feeling that something wasn't right. It was a dark night, and the road was long. I didn't see a soul until something brown flashed on my passenger side of my car, and I felt a bump. I thought I had hit a deer, so I stopped to make sure it was dead. When I got to the front of the car, nothing was there. No blood trail, no damage to my car. I looked at both sides of the car and no signs of damage or an animal. That really creeped me out because I knew I had hit something. And then there I am in the middle of the road, black as night, except for the light of my headlights. I walked around the car one more time, and that's when it happened. I stepped into something like a wall of static electricity. It hit me from head to toe. I'd only felt this one other time in my life, and that was years before this incident. I knew that I had stepped in the middle of a spirit. I stood there, and it felt like the feeling would go away and then come back over the next couple minutes. I let them pass through me and then headed to the car, locked the door, and drove on home. I knew what had happened, but getting anyone to believe me was a totally different story. Later, I did some research on the area at the local historical society. Apparently, many years before, a regiment of Confederate soldiers had marched in the direction headed towards the Battle of Fort Smith. They lost the battle, and the Federal troops took over the town. I wonder if they continue to march to this day to a battle that they'll lose.
Back in the 1970s, there was a young woman who got in a car crash, and it ended up taking her life. And her parents was very sad, as any parent would be. And they identified her and everything like that. And they had her funeral and buried her. It was about 6 months later, and said a man came, knocked on the door, saying they had their daughter in the car outside and needed a ride back home, and that, they thought it was some kind of sick joke. Said they went outside to look in the car, and nothing. Said they told him to get lost, thinking it was just some kind of sick joke. Well, there was a man, said that he was out driving one night. Said he stopped at a gas station to fill up the truck. And said he was asking the guy at the gas station how far it was to get where he was going, and if he'd show him, the road he was going to be going down. Well, the old man stopped him before he could finish what he was going to be saying. He said, "Wow, I wouldn't go that way if I was you." This is about 2 years after that happened. Well, he asked him why, and he said about 2 years back, a woman had been killed on that road. So he said, "Oh, I don't believe in all that stuff." Well, the old man said, "Well, I can't stop you," and showed him the way. But said, "Whatever you do, don't stop to pick nobody up on that road." He paid and left, put gas in the truck, and off down the road he went. Said he drove for about 20, 30 miles. Said he was coming around a curve in the road. Said he seen a woman standing in the road flagging him down. Well, he stopped and asked her, what she needed. She said her car broke down and asked him if he would give her a ride to her parents' house. Said it was about 10 miles up the road. He was going that way anyway, so he said, "Yeah, sure, come on, I can give you a ride." Well, no, he said, "Yeah, come on, I can give you a ride." Not seeing a broken down car anywhere, but said he didn't think much of it. At the time, he was just thinking, well, she didn't, say anything out of the way, so he didn't think much about it. He was just thinking about getting her home. Well, he pulled into the driveway of the house. She told him to go knock on the door. He got out of the car and but she didn't. He thought it was kind of weird that she didn't get out of the car too, but he went and knocked on the door, and a man answered. Said he told him he had their daughter in the car. Said she broke down. Well, the man stopped him, told him to get out of there, kick rocks. Said they're sick and tired of them sick jokes. He said, "What are you talking about, sir? She's in my truck right there, look." So he looked back at his truck, and nothing. So the man slammed the door in his face. Well, that being said, the man went back to his truck. Nobody being in it, kind of freaked out when he got back in his truck and hightailed it out of there. But he went back the other way, and thinking about the situation, he knows he didn't take his eyes off the road but for a split second to look at the man and the door. So, it weren't time enough for somebody to get out and hide. Well, he drove about 10 miles, and he finally came back to the curve in the middle of the road. And there she was, standing there trying to flag him down again. Said it scared him about half to death, and said he floored it. Said he drove home, driving the whole time thinking about what happened. Well, said he went back to that gas station, and come to find out, the old man that told him about what happened at the road there was the man that originally picked her up 6 months after she died, and told him about what happened at the beginning of the story. After he left the gas station, said he never went back around there again. He said he didn't care if anybody believed him or not. He said he seen what he seen. People may say, whatever they want. But people do say at night you can still see that woman trying to flag people down.
I remember in 2007 or so, I was about 14 years old. My mom came home from a night shift at work and she was freaking out. She would take a long mountain road home and she was normally the only car on the road, or one of few, since it was so late and in a remote area. The mountain road was very curvy, and on this particular night, she was turning a curve. She saw what looked like the Mothman near a tree. She said it was huge and had bird like wings, but had the body of a man and red eyes. It looked startled to see her in her car, and then it jumped up and flew above her car. She couldn't get over how huge it was and how it was able to stay right above her car like that. She thought it was going to pick up her car and fly off with her. She was so scared, but it ended up flying away. It's been about 16 years now, and if you bring it up to her, she still gets goosebumps from it. I'll never forget how startled she seemed when she came home that night. I'm curious to this day about what it was and if it was the Mothman creature. It was probably 25 years ago when it happened. My sister lives on the Alabama River down a dirt road that is about 7 twisty roads that aren't well maintained. My husband and I used to visit her on the weekends and have cookouts and river riding and such. We stayed pretty late one night and we were riding down the godforsaken road, and then something appeared above us off to the right. It was bright and it was focused on us as we rode down the road. It mimicked our every turn. We weren't so much scared as we were curious. Then just like that, it shot off at warp speed. We got home and called my sister to tell her about it, and she said, "Y'all are drunk. That didn't happen." Well, that very next week, she had a wake-up call. She was working the night shift, and she was riding the same crappy dirt road at about 2 in the morning when she saw this big, bright circle right over the top of her truck, and it hovered. She said it was so bright it lit up the woods on one side of the pasture across from her. She had never been so scared in her life, and just like us, it shot off and disappeared at warp speed. I know she's telling the truth because she doesn't drink at all. She was scared to go to work because she thought it might come back.
My story begins when I left my mom's house. I'd gone over to visit because my father, 63 years old, recently passed away. Mom weren't taking it too well. She needed support from her loved ones, and I was more than willing to go visit and help keep her company, but it was getting late. Mom lives in the suburbs. Tiddly lawns, plenty of neighbors, paved roads, and even though it was near 11 p.m. when I left, the streets were extremely lit by the street lights. We had always had, a safe of ease and mind at heart. These lights only lit the road, though, and glanced across the street. The houses were cast in an eerie shadow, and even a rather safe, charming little neighborhood can seem spooky and uninviting when it cast in shadow. I admit, I was terribly chilled. Sliding into my car, I revved the engine and waved at my mother, who was standing in the doorway, wrapped comfortably in a warm shawl. She waved back, her old and fragile arm shaking. I saw her mouth. "Be careful," I smiled, backing out of the driveway. I turned out of the neighborhood, deciding to take the back way, a shorter way home tonight. In hindsight, that might not have been a good idea. I live a significant way out in the middle of the country, in an old farmhouse I grew up in, which my father had left me, left it in my name when he and my mom moved out. My father, had always told me growing up, don't go out at night. Always beware of the devils. He was a strong believer in anything and everything paranormal. Very suspicious man. And I always had to resist the urge to laugh at his words, but I knew he meant well. Driving down the country roads, there were no street lights, banged up, potholed, paved roads with cracked field. The fields on either side of the road were empty, just blank stretches of overgrown grass and unattended shrubbery. The dark outlined the trees of the woods. I could see the looming all the way across the field in the shadowy horizon. One might have been even seen a deer or two, once in a while in them fields, but not tonight. The moon offered little light as the sky rolled with dark, threatening clouds ready to burst with a rain or storm at any minute. Sure enough, a few moments later, the low grumble of thunder sounded, heavy and long. However, no rain fell just yet, much to my pleasure. I hate driving at night and in the rain. And putting them two together would end badly, I just knew it. Accompanied by the occasional roll of thunder, I started to feel a bit anxious. I can't explain it. I just felt shaken up. probably because it was night and it would start raining, or maybe, reading too many ghost stories about the legends. Tonight seemed to reflect the mood and the stories I'd almost read obsessively. To try and calm myself, I flicked on the old car's radio, turned the old-fashioned black knob back and forth, slowing down a bit as I attempted to find a station that came in clearly. Nothing doing. Weird. There was a broadcasting tower right near here. Usually came in perfect, clear as day. But still nothing. The white noise and static of the blank station was doing nothing to appease my anxiety. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, the more as thunder boomed in the sky. Aggravated, I forcefully shut off the radio, gritting my teeth. Glancing down the dashboard, I noticed I was nearly out of gas. Groaning, I searched the road for a gas sign. As I was scanning the side of the road, I noticed from the corner of my eye 2 figures walking on the side of the road, shrouded in a shadow. They were walking slowly. One turned around, walking backwards, his thumb sticking out. I felt compelled to pull over and give them a ride, and I found my hands turning the wheel slightly, but I pulled back, realizing how stupid it was of me to do that, except 2 random strangers in my car in the middle of the night on a backcountry road. So I sped up past them, trying not to look at them as I did so, though it felt oddly intriguing by them as I focused on the road ahead. It started drizzling, dropping my mood to another level. Along with the rain and thunder, it seemed louder and closer as the storm moved in. A few seconds passed until I gave my composition to look at the 2 figures. I glanced in my rearview mirror, and it seemed as if the 2 were walking faster, and the one no longer had his thumb out, but it had to be my imagination. How would I be able to tell if they were walking faster or not? Rainy and dark. Looking back up the road, I almost missed a sign that offered me the gas to stop up ahead. A sigh of relief passed my lips, and I slowed down, looking for any indication to stop. Pushing the thought of the 2 figures forward in my head, as soon as I pulled into the gas station slowly, as the rain started to pick up. The store was closed, but luckily had a 24-hour gas pump service. Well, that was good for me. As if they had not, I'd had run out a few miles down the road. I shut the car off, hesitatingly shuffled out of the metal shell and glanced over my shoulder. Still nothing. Not being able to shake that nervous feeling that had manifested inside me earlier that night. I stood under the light of the overhang, trying to figure out how to work the pump, which seemed to be overcomplicated in the dim light, my mind not being able to focus on the task. The rain picked up more, heavier and louder against the concrete at the gas stop as I finally was able to get the pump into my car, forcing my hand to stop it shaking. I had a horrible feeling that my shaking was just because of the bitterly cold air night. Suddenly the overhang lights of the gas stop started flickering wildly. A couple going out together. It seemed as if the temperature dropped 20 degrees in a few seconds. As I glanced around, a sinking feeling started to blossom in my stomach. As if in a slow motion, I turned around, facing backwards the road. I saw what I expected to see right there. But as much as I knew what I'd see, I still felt the drop in my stomach. The color drained from my face as I breathed a sharp, cold breath, forcefully. It almost caught in my throat. Across the street, the 2 figures were standing facing me. They started crossing the street slowly but surely. I fumbled with the gas pump. It had only been a few moments, but it seemed as if the gas pump was taking its precious time. I was shaking hard now as the thunder boomed once more and I looked back up. The figures were now at the entrance to the gas stop, and my breath was quick and shallow. As I blindly shoved the pump back into its holder, not being able to tear my eyes away from the figures. As they drew closer, I became more frantic. Even though now, as they walked into the flickering light of the overhang, I saw they were just 2 teenagers. They looked ragged, frigid, and soaked from the rain. I straightened up a bit, still terrified, but another compulsive feeling similar to the one I experienced in the car, was bubbling. I felt obligated to ask the two, though I insisted to myself just drive away and not risk anything. They were extremely close now, and at the next pump, I slid in my car, shaking wildly, fumbled for my keys, cursing myself. I dropped them on the floor and leaned down. I swapped them up and sat back up. A cold, sickening feeling came in to me face to face with one of the teens, who had his hand on my window, knocking slowly but forcefully. I rolled down the window a bit, just a bit, no bigger than to allow maybe a small child's hand through. Before I spoke, he spoke first, the other figure standing in the background. But still I could see something grin there in the pale face. "Can you give us a ride into town? We missed the bus, don't have a ride." He spoke slow, and something about his voice made me shiver. A cold chill swept down my spine, and I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Clearing my throat, I glanced at the dashboard and at the keys in my hand. "I'm sorry, kids, but I'm not going into town." I kept my eyes down and out the kids. However, the teenager knocked harsher and made me jump a little, as he insisted another time for a ride. I told him no once more, and looked up, trying to seem intimidated, which seemed silly. Trying to seem intimidated to a child, but a horrible, chilling sight greeted me. I looked the kid right in the eyes and grasped sharply, my back hitting my seat as I went back away. He had eyes. Oh, he did. But they were blacker than the night, pitch black. No discernible pupils, no white whatsoever, showering pure black, deep, brooding, and surprisingly intriguing. My fear got the better of me, and I quickly turned the key, and my engine revved to life, thank God, which I had never done before the night. My car had not stalled and went and pulled away. The kid banged on the window with a pale fist, screaming for a ride. I took off, speeding down the road, apologizing to my father again and again and again that I had laughed at him. Never took his warning seriously. After a few more minutes, I pulled into my driveway, right in my lawn in the front porch. I didn't want to spend any more time outside than I already had, and jumped from the car. Leaving the car door open, ran inside, slamming the door and locking it. Even going as far as to put a chain in front of the door in case somebody or something tried to get in. Sinking into the chair at the front door, I shivered uncontrollably and started to cry, hiding my face in my hands as two dark figures stood at the end of my driveway.